Good evening, welcome to Crazy Cabin Fever Cocktails. I'm Tim Niddle. We are with Distilled Living and produced by Fascination Design. So I am doing another cocktail that Hillary developed. She developed this about 3 or 4 days ago. We've had it nearly every night since because it is amazingly delicious. But we haven't talked about cocktail theory in a little while, so I wanted to walk through kind of the discussion that undergoes every time we are standing in the kitchen trying to decide what our cocktail hour libation is going to be, because it almost always starts with a Manhattan. Now the foundational cocktail underneath the Manhattan is obviously the old-fashioned. Even before that is a sling. So sling is spirit, some sort of sweet. Nowadays we use simple syrup because that's easy to work with. This is kind of boring. So the father of all cocktails, if you will, is the old-fashioned, which is spirit, usually bourbon or rye, a little sugar water, and a little bitters over ice. Optional lemon, cherry, what have you with that. Now it's pretty easy to go from this to a Manhattan. So I'm going to take away my simple syrup, and I'm going to introduce sweet vermouth. And this is going to be my sweet element in this cocktail. This brings a lot more complexity and depth. This is almost always served up, so no ice, usually in a martini glass, but I'm using a coupe here for tonight. Now this is pretty sweet done like this. There's usually 2 dashes of bitters, 1 ounce of simple syrup, or excuse me, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and 2 ounces of bourbon. So we very often turn this into a perfect cocktail, which causes us to split the vermouth. So we're going to introduce a dry vermouth, which is going to bring it down by half each way. So 2 dashes, half ounce, 2 ounces. Now, one direction you can take this is go back to my basic Manhattan here, take away my bitters, and introduce an Amaro, so a bitter liqueur. Now at this point we're moving from a little tiny bottle to a much bigger bottle, so our pour size goes up proportionally. 2 dashes here is typically 1 full ounce here. So now we're at a 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce cocktail. Now this is going to bring a lot of sweetness. This brings sweetness and bitterness together because this is a bitter liqueur. Yes?
Is it not 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 2 ounce?
Isn't that what I said? Let's screw this up.
1 ounce, 1 ounce.
I am corrected. 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 2 ounces. So Manhattan, 2 dashes, 1 ounce, 2 ounces. Swap out our 2 ounces of bitter for 1 ounce bitter liqueur, 1 ounce sweet vermouth, 2 ounces of bourbon. Thank you for that correction. But the problem now is we're at a double sweet. Now not all Amaros are going to bring a lot of sweet character. This one particularly does. So if you use Campari or something like that, you have a little less sweet character. This is a Boulevardier or Boulevardier or whatever, however that cocktail is pronounced. And this is a great cocktail. But what Hillary did was she changed this and made this dry. So not just perfect, which would have been splitting these two in a Manhattan, but really we're just going to substitute out dry vermouth in for sweet vermouth entirely, still with the 1 ounce. We have some sweet character here, with some bitter character here. We have some rounding it out and building it up with this, building it a little more structure. And then this is our foundation with the bourbon itself. So now we're at a 1, 1, 2 cocktail. I'm going to go ahead and start building this. And we originally did this with Elijah Craig, which is great and gave it a kind of sweet character, which was actually pretty good. And then we used the Bullet as for a second or a third or however many we were into it at that point, which I liked a little better. Very often with this cocktail you do an orange twist as a garnish, but I felt like we had so much floral going on here and spice going on from our base spirit, our Bullet bourbon, that it didn't need anything else when I was done with it. So key here is 1 ounce of my Amaro, or my bitter liqueur, which, because it's liqueur, does bring some sugar, like I mentioned. And 1 ounce of my dry vermouth. Dolan is what we almost always use. This is just kind of our house vermouth at this point, which is, there are a bunch of others out there, but they bring normally a lot more fruit or floral character, spice character, something different about them. We like this as a base without bringing too much different than what we have otherwise in the cocktail. And then 2 ounces of my Bullet. Now, like a Manhattan, this is using vermouth, which I like to say doesn't play well with others, but also this Amaro, this bitter liqueur that really doesn't play well with others. So unfortunately, now it's kind of boring because I just have to sit here and stir this. And when you're making cocktails at home, and you're working with vermouths and bitter liqueurs, amaros and things, you can't shortchange this step. You just have to give it a nice long stir. If you short this, the whole cocktail is bitter and disorganized, and the finish is weird. Try it, actually, at some point, and you'll understand the difference. If I stop stirring it now and sample it, give it another 30 seconds, sample it, give it another 30 seconds, sample it, it really changes dramatically and gets better as it sits. I really think Manhattans and this which we're calling a dry Boulevardier is best served the longer it sits. Make this in advance, strain it, stick it in the fridge. It will only get better with time. There's also, if you have those mini barrels, this before this dried out, this actually would have held liquid. This is a great cocktail to put in something, put in a mini barrel and let it change over time, and then just give it if you've done it in a mini barrel, and because it's had that time, you can give it a quick stir over ice just to chill it down and just to dilute it a little bit, because it's going to be fully integrated and your flavor profile is going to work really, really well. So I'm just going to, I'm waiting. I can tell when it's integrated because I start getting a really strong aromatic off of it that is very pleasant, and I just quite haven't achieved that. Almost there. I'm not doing an amazing stir. I needed actually a little bit more ice. I pulled a little bit too much ice out of my cocktail vessel here. So, all right, we're starting to get to the right place. This is for me, so I'm not worried about touching ice. And give this a pour. Maybe if I wanted to garnish this, I would do a cherry. But I'm not going to add any more citrus. There's enough going on that I don't think this is enhanced in any way by the traditional orange or lemon zest garnish. It's just beautiful, rich depth. I mean, there's just so much going on here, but it doesn't come across with that cloying sweet because Hillary substituted in that dry vermouth. Oh, that's so good. So here you are, dry Boulevardier. Built up from the philosophy of an old-fashioned to a Manhattan to the Boulevardier to the dry style. Cheers.